All right, guys, we are back with another NZ set review. Today we're going to look at NZ set 7, titled Toughest in the World. The gimmick of this set was that it was the first NZ set to include Tough Enough only cards. In the Z League, half of our events every year are Tough Enough, half of them are Standard. So we thought it was kind of due time to make some cards specifically for the Tough Enough events that make up half of the events we play. So there will be a number of cards you'll see in this set that include that Tough Enough tag and are made more to focus on that kind of format. This is another large set. There are 40 cards in the set, plus the World Champion card from the 2024 season. So just like the other two parters, we're going to go through the style of cards first today, and then in the follow-up video we will have the second part, the freestyle cards, as well as the personality cards in the set. So with this being another lengthy video, let's just get started. This is Black Bulma's Reprogramming, the non-combat card that lets you choose an opponent's non-combat or non-drill card, specifically non-combat, non-drill card in play. You now control the chosen card. When the chosen card leaves play, it is shuffled into your opponent's life deck. If Bulma is your MP, you may use this card when entering combat. So you play this card, enter combat. If you're Bulma, use it right away. If not, use it as an action. Take control of one of their non-combat cards that isn't a drill, and then it's just yours. It's now just essentially on your side of the table, doing whatever it would have done for them, but for you. If you want to use their Fatherly, if you want to use their Expectant Trunks, if they haven't already popped it, things like that. Now, if you're Bulma and you take their Expectant Trunks and then use their Expectant Trunks, pretty brutal. To balance that out a little bit, though, it does shuffle back into their deck, so they at least get another chance to try to use it. But this card's very cool. It's one of those cards that kind of leans into the angle that we've done with some of the black cards, where they do like really unique stuff with both or either player's non-combat cards. We talked in one of the previous videos about black. Nick, help me with the kick card.
Turning or
pointed kick.
Pointed kick.
That lets you take one of their. Take any of their non-combats that you hit as damage, so that we do a little bit of that kind of just messing with your opponent's board state. And I think this is a really cool card for doing that, especially in Bulma. Black Bulma is already a deck that's pretty good, and this is just a really nice addition to it.
Yeah, so obviously this pairs well with Black Bulma, like you said. Bulma cares about Bulma name cards going to the discard pile, which this one does, and catching somebody's Expectant or Fatherly or something like that with this card is incredibly strong. Basically, the Black Bulma deck is going to play this every time. Most other black decks, like this is one of those Sensei deck considerations, right? If you think you're going to play against a non-combat heavy field, then this is a card you're going to really like. Or if you're a non-combat heavy deck, you could play this card a lot. What also this has is kind of a threat of activation. So even if you're not Bulma, if your opponent plays Expectant Trunks, they feel like they need to, Fatherly Advice, they feel like they need to enter and use their Fatherly. Because if not, you can just enter and you can get control of their Fatherly immediately. So that's a really powerful effect, obviously. This card's been really fun. It doesn't always work, and sometimes it's a little underwhelming. But this card can also just absolutely take over a game. The next card up is Black Goldo's Time Freeze. This is a physical attack that does 1 life card of damage, and it stays in play to be used one more time this combat. For every one of your attacker attacks phases that this card stays in play, it does +1 life card. So, obviously this card is pretty straightforward, right? It wants you to lead with it and put it into play as a physical for 1 life card, and then every single attack phase, it adds another damage, adds another damage, adds another damage. So this card kind of goes into two flavors. The first kind of deal with it is that it's a physical for life cards, which we've leaned into a lot with Black, is physical for life cards, as kind of one of Black's styles, one of the ways Black likes to play. The second thing this leads into is with both a newer MP and, of course, the card's namesake, Goldo. If you play a lot of cards, go through a lot of attack phases. So basically any deck that plays long turns is going to get value out of this card. And so for every one of your attacker attacks phases, even if you immediately throw this again next turn, you do get 1 bonus. So, physical for 3 life cards as the floor is not terrible. But what this really is most of the time is you use it once and it does 1 life card, and then you use it again and it does 5. and that's not counting any modifiers you get from your mastery. So that's where it obviously gets good, is when you can use the modifiers from the mastery to really pump out this effect.
Yeah, that's exactly right. If you have a deck that can play along combat, this is the card for you. It's it's good, and like Nick said, there's an MP in this set that makes good use of it because he's got some kind of delayed effects. Goldo, because you draw 2 extra cards, giving you elongated combats. It's good in Boo with like the offensive high tech where you get 2 powers to extend your turns there. Of course, like an ally deck or something like that too, where you've just got other attacks you could be doing other than this one. So there are ways that you can really pile this up. And then, like Nick said, if you're playing it in Trunk Saga or something for just extra damage on top of it, it can really add up pretty quickly. This has been a really fun card, actually. It's a little unassuming when you first read it, but it's been really fun. Black Risky Maneuver is a physical combat, stops an energy attack. It has Endurance 2, and then if you declare to Tokawaza, you may have your MP lose up to 8 power stages. For every 2 power stages lost this way, the next attack you perform this combat does +1 life card of damage. So, without explanation, this card is the energy block for ally decks. You pay a bunch of stages, and then your next attack does a bunch of extra damage. You can pay as many, up to 8 stages, which is most of the stages on an MP, to then get low enough to use your allies to have, a Kid Trunks teenager do his energy attack plus 8 extra life cards, or a Piccolo the Avenger with 8 extra life cards, or 6 extra life cards, or however many you needed to lose. There's just a ton of ways that you can kind of take advantage of this in the right spot to pump out a ton of extra damage. Or sometimes, if you're really feeling risky with it, and your opponent throws an energy attack at you and you're not an ally deck, you can still use this, pay some stages, and then throw a physical attack that does that many extra life cards. That's much more risky and far less common since, as we've said before, black just has so many good blocks. But if you're trying to get, silly with it and a little bit risky, this card can really output some damage for you, and is just a lot of utility in, especially, in ally decks.
Yeah, I mean, this card has single-handedly made black one of the premier ally decks, which is cool, because ally was one thing that black, never really had anything for, and most decks, most styles only really had one pro ally card, so a lot of the ally decks ended up being kind of janky, or ended up being a non-Tokawaza mismatch of cards. So I really think that this leans black into the ability to play ally decks going forward. This is a physical combat. It is that on purpose. As a way to kind of control the power level, so you couldn't transform with Aura Eruption and Galagon and some of those various effects. But if you're an ally deck, this is an auto-include. Even if you only have a few allies, I think you could consider it, mainly because the suite of black energy blocks is not strong. It's really just black recovery at this point that's playable. And this having endurance helps you make that decision a little bit easier. So it's something you can consider in an ally deck or in a non-ally deck. But in an ally deck, you don't even care that you can you can make your next attack do +4 life cards, because really losing the 8 stages is what it's really all about. The effects like this have always worked like that. But yeah, this is a sweet card. It definitely leans black into being able to play an ally deck, which is great. And there some ally personalities will really need this, and then some, like maybe a Bojack, who's already a black ally deck, he can play this basically for free because he can lose that 8 stages because he don't really care what his power level is. So, very cool card. Definitely opened up a new archetype. One of my favorite cards from the set. And the last card is our Tough Enough Only card of black. It is Black Ball Absorption. So this is a physical attack doing 3 life cards of damage. If successful, you may remove a Dragon Ball you control from the game to use its power. Remove from the game after use. So, first thing, another black physical for life cards. Again, a little sub-theme, kind of what we're looking to kind of pivot black in a lot of different directions instead of powering up with generic cards. So the big thing on this, if successful, you may remove a Dragon Ball you control from the game to use its power. So kind of obvious why this is a tough enough effect. We don't really love the idea of having more cards that remove Dragon Balls in Standard. But, I mean, this is pretty straightforward, right? You want to use this in a deck that with a draw Dragon Ball. This is Earth Dragon Ball 3, one of the Dragon Ball 3s, or Earth Dragon Ball 5 or something like that. Like that's where you're going to get your value from this card. It's going to be, playing a deck that has 2 or 3 draw balls and then using this to throw an attack and, if successful, remove your draw ball to draw more cards. So the big fear with draw balls is always that they get stolen, and it's so bad when they get stolen. So being able to remove it for value is a great thing to do with it to stop it from being able to be stolen from you.
Yep, that's a great explanation for the card. It's a little bit simple. It's a little bit narrow in its use. It sees less play than a lot of other black cards do, but I think it's still a pretty interesting one. Something I'm still waiting on seeing happen in like a organized game. I really want to see someone play this in a Black Trunk Saga deck to steal the ball with 5 life cards of damage and then use the ball. And so like steal a ball 3, draw 3 cards, use the ball 3, draw 3 cards, and get 6 cards off of this. There's a world where that could happen, and I think it'd be crazy. But normally you're just going to shuffle in like one of your own draw balls, like Dick said, and remove one of your own draw balls, and get to just draw some extra cards, not have your opponent get a chance to get back, and just sort of profit. It kind of turns one of your Dragon Balls into a card that's more like a combat card that says draw 3 cards, or a non-combat even, for that matter, as opposed to one that can kind of bounce back and forth. Mm-hmm. It's an interesting card, and is one of the examples of sometimes the cards in NZ, in black specifically, are a little less than wildly impactful, mostly because black is still like an incredibly dominant color. So instead of, like Nick said, just kind of making good black cards, we've done that a couple of times, and we try very hard now to not just make like generically good black cards. They're very much for something, or for something weird, or like a weird little kind of niche angle to take the black decks into, as opposed to just going into everything. So this one definitely makes you build in a different way, but has a good payoff if you can pull it off. That takes us out of our black cards and into blue. This is Blue Trickster Drill. It has resist. Once per combat, when one of your blue style attacks is stopped, you may discard a card from your hand to put the stopped attack back into your hand. So, as we've talked a little bit about in the past, some of the blue, if successful, effects in the game are part of the reason that blue is any good. And so sometimes it's really important that you nail one of those if successfuls. So this card just gives you the opportunity, if your deck is really relying on those, to throw it. Oh, it got blocked. Okay, I guess I'll pitch one other thing to try it again. This works especially well with Colossal Throw, where you play Colossal Throw, they stop it. Okay, cool. It goes back to my hand, and then I discard a card from my hand to put it back. And that card that I discarded, if the Colossal Throw that I throw the second time is successful, I can pick up the card that I just discarded, and you can kind of combo it into like free value that way. So there's some neat ways to pull that off. This is another one of those that's like the ball absorption card, where it's very weird, and its use cases are very niche. But I think it's a really interesting card, and it makes you really... It's sort of like we talked about with that Bulma card. It being on the table just has that sort of threat of, knowing that when my opponent throws a attack at me with an if successful effect, I might have to block it twice now. That's a good... that's just a good little threat to have on the table.
So the angle that I really like with this drill is kind of the opposite angle, where I'm not playing if successfuls, but I'm playing things like Blue Miskick and Blue Betrayal that can remove nons or allies in play and things like that. And so you throw this, this little physical attack that's, people just stop without thinking about it because it's a physical attack. And then it's like, oh, okay, well, I removed 2 things with my Miskick. Now you stopped it, so I'm going to discard this random card. I'm going to put my Miskick back in my hand, and I'm going to get 2 more things with it. That happens way more often than you think. So, on one hand, it's like, you have your if successfuls that they have to stop twice. And on the other hand, you have your powerful effects like Miskick, where it's like, man, I guess I can't stop this now because because if I stop it, he'll get to put it back in his hand and do it again. So it actually has a wide range of when this card is good. It does have resist too, which is a big insulator for drills, which means that you can put it into play, and maybe if it takes a couple combats to get real value out of it, you don't feel bad about that.
Interesting thing, as you can see just looking at the card, it's our first GT related card in all of the Score Z game. We've done mostly Z and a little bit of Dragon Ball Super stuff. The previous card is a Dragon Ball Heroes art too, so we really got a little bit expanded the horizons with some of the art choices in this set. But what better trickster scene than Gogeta just being a goof?
Okay, the next card for blue is Blue Intense Key Drill. This is a non-combat, of course. Your main personality is PUR, that's your power up rating, it's +3. And the first blue style attack you perform each combat does +X life cards of damage, where X is your MP's PUR. So there has been several cards in Score that care about your PUR, and that give you a little boost to PUR, or double your PUR, or the big one is Blue Double Blast, which is an energy you get to use twice that does extra damage for your PUR. So we kind of thought that pivoting into blue as a PUR deck kind of color would be interesting, and this is one of the drills for it. This is one of the 2 cards in this set that really focuses on that. So most energy decks, they need stages, right? So +3 PUR is good for that. The first blue style attacks +X damage for extra PUR. So if you're playing just a generic guy who's got a 2 on his level 1, then that's 3 with your Tokuwaza, 3 more with this. That means your first blue style attack does +6. And that is not best case. That's just normal, which is pretty good. It's pretty good. This deck also plays a lot of focused cards and a lot of focused energies. So a generic focused energy with this in play and a generic MP is going to do 10 life cards. That's a lot of life cards. This card can absolutely shell out damage. When you are playing this kind of deck, your opponent has to answer this drill quickly. And that's what makes it really strong. Anytime you can put a drill in play that needs to be answered, that is very powerful.
Yeah, Nick said it really well there. It's like kind of bog standard for a good MP to have 2 as its like PUR rating. 1 was really early in the game or on like kind of select guys, and it sort of crept eventually into dudes just sort of had 2, and that's real common. And most decks have a Tokuwaza mastery, so you get your +1, so you got your 3 and you get your 6 here. And just like every turn, getting an extra 6 life cards on one of your attacks is a ton of extra damage output as long as it sticks around. It becomes a huge target for your opponent. This is one of those drills that like instantly gets warped off the table if your opponent gets a chance. But while you have it, it puts out so much. It puts in so much work. Even if you ignore the like damage element of things too, it's nice. Where you can play it on a guy who has a traditionally low PUR, like the dudes who do have like a printed 1, to give them a 5 for the turn, and that's a really nice way to kind of keep a character who normally wouldn't power up very much in the game a little bit more. You'll notice as we go through the next couple blue cards here too, that in the last few sets that we've done, we have made some really, really strong blue attacks. To the point that blue has become very, very good because of it. And so with this set, we wanted to focus a little bit more on kind of slowing down the strategy of blue into like leaning into more of its drill direction as opposed to just kind of shoveling at more attacks or even blocks. We wanted it to be something you had to brood on a little bit more and build around. Which takes us into our next card. Blue Yamcha Spirit Shot, hilariously not a drill, but it's a focused energy attack that does 1 life card of damage. This attack does +X life cards of damage, where X is your main personality's PUR. Until the end of your next turn, your main personality gains +2 PUR. So, we've talked a little bit about blue energy being a thing we're trying to foster a little bit of. And like Nick said with the last card, that one and this one together really do lean into that kind of blue PUR energy beats deck, and this really is a great payoff for it. It does a really small base damage, but getting your extra PUR damage is fantastic if you've got that drill out, which is very common to play with this. You're getting an extra 3 PUR too. So if you're a normal 2 guy with your mastery and that, you're getting +6 on this, which means it does 7. But then that card says you get whatever your PUR is as extra damage. So then you got another +6 on top of that. But then this card says you get +2 more PUR. So then you're just getting like more. It just piles up really fast. But it still has a base damage of 1, which is really important for its Yamcha tag, because that means it's like kind of printed damage is low enough that Yamcha can cycle this card with his level 1 power, which makes a really good sort of home, a premier blue energy MP, I think, is Yamcha at this point. Maybe I could see an argument for like a Tien or something too, but Yamcha with blue really, and especially with this card and the drill, really cemented itself as like the good blue energy deck. It's been awesome to see it played. It's put in a lot of work for the color and for the archetype, and this card has done a lot to propel that forward.
Yeah, this is my absolute favorite card from the set. I'm a big fan of Yamcha's level. I think it's a cool ability. I think that what Yamcha can do with this card is very cool. You'll notice the name also has shot in the title, which will come into effect a little bit later. But this just being a focused energy attack is super useful too. People can't block focused energy attacks. I say that every video. It's always going to be true. People don't play enough focused energy attack blocks. This card can go absolutely nuts. This card just plus a blue intense key drill can do 15 life cards of damage in one swing. I mean, it's absolutely crazy what this card can, the amount of damage this card can shell out. I think with just this and no sensei or anything boost, it's 17, which is absolutely absurd if you throw it as your first attack. So this also powers up your future spirit shots, also powers up your key build or key blast, your blue double blast, and various other PUR strats. Like this card and plus the drill is kind of what makes the PUR deck turn now. And I think it's one of the better energy decks in the game. So the last card in blue is the Tough Enough Only card, and this is Blue Copycat Drill. So this is Tough Enough Only. If you declare Tokuwaza, Blue Copycat Drill's power box becomes a copy of your opponent's mastery box, except treat any styled words as if they said blue instead. So, real quick, this is pretty obvious. Its power level is very dependent on what your opponent's doing, right? With that said, it's incredibly strong. I do not play this card in my main deck because there are a lot of people's masteries that I don't want. So, this card is a Sensei deck card to me, but it's a multiple copies of your Sensei deck because certain masteries this is absolutely backbreaking against. Most Saiyan masteries, the draw card masteries, this is great. Any of the damage buff masteries, Black Trunk Saga, basically most black decks, this is great. Namekian draw card masters, that's great. There are some times I don't want to play this, right? Like I'm not going to play this against Red Trunk Saga because I'm just going to level off of it. It's not very strong in that spot. But the matchups where their mastery is beneficial for you, this is great. Basically, any blue mirror you can play it. The amount of decks, this is good against 80% of decks. And anytime you can get a card that's good against 80% of decks, it's a card you're going to want access to. This is another drill that a good chunk of the time when you put it into play, your opponent's got to answer it. Because they cannot afford for you to get your mastery plus their mastery for the whole game.
Yeah, Nick and I are both big proponents of this card. I adore the power level of this card. It puts so much pressure on your opponent to deal with it. If you're playing your mastery plus your opponent's Black Trunk Saga mastery, and you're like, yeah, I guess my Divinity mastery with my damage buff and my block and whatever, plus your +2/+2 on all my attacks, it just really adds up. If you're drawing a bunch of extra cards you shouldn't have been drawing because of Saiyan or Namekian or something, that's good. Or powering up to full, which you probably like in like an energy deck. There's just a ton of ways that this card puts in so much mileage. I love this card. It's another one that I don't run main deck typically either, but I do have like 2 or 3 of it in the Sensei because it's super good when it's good. Out of blue into Namekian, we have Namekian Crushing Blow. It's a physical combat card that just does 8 power stages of damage Doesn't use the table, which, as we've mentioned before, is relevant. Also looks at the top 5 cards of your life deck. You may put all of them on the top or bottom of your life deck in any order. So you get to stack the top of your deck, set up the bottom of your deck also for cards that would care about that. But this card is good with the Namekian cards that care about 8, but also is really nice for Namekian Tactical Mastery, where the top card of your deck matters. You can use this to kind of stack the top of your deck to be a relevant card, so that you can play whatever is in the new card on top as though it were in your hand because of your mastery. You can just set up some better plays that way instead of having kind of a random card come up on top. You can sort of pre-plan what's going to be there. And just having it do 8 table damage, or 8 flat damage without using the table is nice too. As we talked about with some of the Namekians, they're older, weaker characters sometimes, the Nails and early Piccolos and stuff of the world, Kami even. So not having to use the table is pretty relevant for them too.
Yeah, the big thing with this is just the amount of damage, because like Derek said, most of the Namekians are not really high on the power level chart. Even if you're playing like Cell or something, they're just not really high on the power level chart. So 8 flat is a good number to be in. Of course, there's all the 8 matters cards, like the Rage and Namekian Rage and some of those various things. This card's incredibly good. If you're playing Namekian, but you're not a full energy deck or a ball deck, you're going to want this card. If you're a hybrid or if you're physical beats, this is an auto 3 of. The next card is Namekian Foresight. So this is an energy combat that's notable for Namekian. Stops a physical or energy attack. Look at the top 5 cards of your life deck or discard pile. You may place them on the top and or bottom of your life deck or discard pile, respectively, in any order. Removed from the game after use. So, again, this is important because it's an energy combat, so it's fetchable by Namekian Strike. It's fetchable by Namekian Energy Focus, which is, Namekian's big 2 chase fetchable cards. It's also just an omni block in Namekian. Namekian suffered for like a couple of styles do from not having a real omni block that was useful, so this fixes that problem for sure. The look at the top 5, Derek kind of just went over the value of that. This is actually a little stronger. It lets you mix and match a little more. But overall, the effect is still the same. It's great with the mastery. It's great to set up endurance. It's great to put cards on the bottom if you're playing world games, so you can make sure you draw correctly with your world games mastery. This card does a lot of things. It's basically good in every single Namekian deck. Setting up the bottom 5 of your discard pile for the Trunk Saga Mastery. There's no Namekian deck, even a ball deck, that I would not play this card in. This is the Omni block that Namekian's been looking for, and it absolutely delivers.
Yep. The one thing I want to say about this card, that because I don't think there's really anything else to say about it, just play it. But the one thing that I would say about this that I just want to make sure no one's confused by is the sort of respectively bit there, where you look at the cards of your life deck or your discard pile and you put them top of your life deck or your discard pile, depending on which deck you looked at. So you can't put cards from your life deck into your discard pile or discard pile cards into your deck. It doesn't like rejuve or anything like that. It just moves the top 5 of your deck to the bottom of your deck, or top 5 of your discard pile to the bottom, in whatever kind of combo you set up. But it doesn't move them between piles. It's that's not any kind of hindrance to it, though. That's very intentional, but it also is still incredibly strong. You want to, if you're the Namekian decks that care about moving stuff, there are ones that care about your deck, there are ones that care about your discard pile, and just being able to set up the spot you need it to is super strong. Then we have Namekian Mouth Wave. It's an energy combat with Endurance 2, energy attack to win 5 life cards of damage, Empower 2. Then, if successful, choose a Namekian stock card in your discard pile and place it on the top or bottom of your life deck or discard pile. Remove from the game after use. I imagine that you can sense a theme by now. This is great for moving the cards where they need to go. We really wanted to use this set to kind of prop up Namekian Tactical Mastery, because while it's a super interesting mastery, it still isn't seeing a ton of play. It just needs just a little more juice, and these last couple cards have really done that to assist in making sure that the top cards of your deck are always relevant, or at least much more often relevant to the strategies that you would want to pull them out for.
Yeah. So Mouthwave to me, so since I've played it, the if successful part is useful, and the decks that want it is pretty clear. Looking at your mastery, whether or not you're going to want this effect, but energy for 7 is pretty good. Namekian does not have a lot of high-powered energy attacks, so I found myself with this card a good chunk of the time just saying, okay, energy for 7, and the floor on that is very, very nice. Also, it has endurance, which is very useful in the Namekian decks, because the Namekian decks like to go a little block light and just use their endurance to kind of defend themselves, so that way you can keep throwing attacks, which is super useful here. I kind of, looking at this card originally, was super unimpressed with the card. I thought it was a little underpowered, but in play, it's proven to be a lot better than I anticipated. Like I said, the energy for 7 as a floor is very nice, and Namekian has a lot of cards that care about the top card of your discard pile, the bottom card of your discard pile, the bottom card of your life deck, the top card of your life deck. Like, those 4 are like key spots in Namekian, be it all the masteries, and not just that, things like Namekian Light Jab, cards that can draw from the top to bottom of your discard pile, Sidekick from the top of your discard pile. So there's a lot of effects that actually care about that kind of stuff, which makes it super useful. So yeah, this card is absolutely overperformed, and I've been very impressed with it so far. Okay, so the Tough Enough card for Namekian is Namekian Key Volley. This is Tough Enough only. You may have up to 8 copies of this card in your deck. Energy attack doing 1 life card of damage, costs 0 power stages to perform. Damage from this attack cannot be modified, changed, or prevented. This attack stays on the table to be used 3 more times this combat. So this card clearly is a Namekian Rage kind of card. It goes in all of the decks that want to gain anger through Namekian Rage. This is what this card is for. It is to help you gain anger in Namekian, which is damn near impossible to do a good chunk of the time. So this is an energy attack for 1 life card. It's never going to do more or less than 1 life card. It's always going to do 1 life card. It's free, which is free is good, and you can use it 4 times per combat. So it's pretty clear what this card is. I mean, I'm not gonna go into too much of a huge detail. I like to play this card as a 1 or 2 of in most of my Namekian Tough Enough decks. I go get this card when I've got Rage attached with many of the energy combat fetchers to gain 4 anger, which is what this card does. It does it in a really cool and unique way, but that's most of the time what this card does. Is it says gain 4 anger, and usually deal 4 life cards to your opponent, because nobody wants to block an energy attack for 1 life card. It feels like a waste. So a lot of times you're going to get 4 life cards of damage and 4 anger out of this card, and you're going to feel great. The 8 copies of this card in your deck thing is more for the cards that care about 8, like Rage. And if you shuffled a ball in with your Dragon Punch, you could go get this. So there's some value to that too. But overall, this is an anger card. That's why it's Tough Enough only. We don't print standard cards that can give you 4 anger. That's way too much. But this is a card you're gonna fit in the decks that want it. You're playing leveling Namekian Tough Enough. You're gonna play this card.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're exactly right. And I think the 8 copies, I can't imagine realistically a Namekian deck that wants to play like really 8 copies of this. I think you'd really be you're building your deck poorly, I think, if you were trying to cram 8 of these in. Unless you like absolutely were dead set on needing to level. Maybe if you were some like, I don't know, Lord Slug deck or something that like really, really wanted to see level 3 and quick, like maybe you would do that. But Nick's right. Like most of the time, the 8 trigger here is that it's now searchable, which is very good in the spots that it's good. Most of the time, it's just going to be energy attack, energy attack, energy attack, energy attack, get 4 life, get 4 anger, move on. It has to combo with another card, which kind of balances it out a little bit. Just having kind of flat 4 anger, although delayed, but still just 4 anger is a lot, even in Tough Enough. So we wanted to make sure that there was some kind of value balance to it. And I think this card has turned out great. It's awesome where it's good. It's been really, really fun to play Namekian decks that can level. It's not something that's ever been doable really before without help of, Ari Tough Enoughs or Clashes or things like that, which are tough because you get to level your opponent then too. This is just a nice way to get to level yourself like other decks that can level and see some of your other stages.
Yeah, one last thing to throw in. If the Boo Saga Mastery ever becomes like a playable mastery, this card will be great in that deck. but I don't know that would ever happen. But if it did, this card would be great. So, all right, so we're on to orange now. Or hold on, is it?
You can go.
Yeah. Sorry. We're on to orange now. This is Orange Speed Shot. It is an energy combat. It has endurance 3. Good amount of endurance. It is a focused energy attack that costs 1 stage to perform. If this is the first attack you perform in combat, it stays on the table to be used one more time this combat. If successful, set your MP to its highest power stage. Okay, so first notice, endurance 3 is obviously a good amount of endurance. Orange usually has a good amount of endurance, which is nice. It is a focused energy attack. We've been over focused energy attacks a whole bunch. It costs 1 stage to perform, which is super useful. If you're playing one of the decks that doesn't have a way to lower anger, like a Cell Saga Mastery deck or something like a cheapen stages. This card costs 1, super useful. It does need to be the first attack you perform, which is a little awkward sometimes. Like sometimes you want to do other things, but it does say first attack. So if you want to lead on a stare down or a confro or something, you can still do that. But this needs to be the first attack to perform to get the full value. And then lastly, the set your MP to its highest power stage. Obviously, the wording is set your MP to get around saying beef and other effects like that, because you're not gaining stages, you're just setting your MP. So this card's got a lot of value in energy decks. I can't imagine an orange energy deck where I would not want to play this. It is definitely a very, very strong card. It has no real flaws that I see. I mean, focused is great, cost 1 stage is great, endurance 3 is great, using it twice is great, powering up to full is great. Like if you're in some kind of ally deck, maybe this is not the card for you. But other than an ally-based deck, I think you're going to want 3 of this in your orange energy decks.
100% agree. This card is fantastic in energy. It puts in so much extra stages for you to gain, especially if you get to pull, get it to be successful twice, setting the full 2 separate times. Very good. Getting around beef is wildly important for an energy deck. So. I love this card. I know some people have, hang-ups with the, needs to be the first thing you do effect or whatever. Those don't bother me a ton. Nick is right that sometimes you do want to lead on a stare down or whatever, but at least with this one needing to be the first attack and not just the first card, that's a little bit less rough, but you can't lead with, a Gohan's Kick before this or something, which sometimes, feels bad. Although a Gohan's Kick in an energy deck kind of feels bad in general, but... different argument. But overall, this card's very, very cool. It's very strong. I love it. It's made Orange Energy fun to play. It's made it a little bit safer. It's just more likely to have some stages to keep playing the game. Things like Lonely Canyon and stuff have helped too, or Orange Rising Energy, that kind of thing. But getting to sort of pile up those effects so that they're more likely to happen more often, netting you more stages, is very, very helpful to the deck. We have Orange Cocky Deflection next. It's an energy combat card, but it stops a physical or energy attack. So nice orange omni there. You may discard an orange non-combat card you have in play to search your life deck for an orange energy combat card other than Orange Cocky Deflection and place it into your hand. So, a lot of orange decks. We've talked about this a little bit before, where even if you're not playing the orange Majin Buu Saga build a million drills wall deck, just because a lot of the good cards in orange are drills or non-combats, you're just going to have those. You're going to tend to have some of that stuff just on the table. So there are plenty of times where you can afford to just get rid of one of those to go grab an applicable orange energy combat card to be able to set up effectively there. There's a lot of targets you could grab with that can be relevant for the time. There's techie stuff that you can grab, like stare downs or orange power beam, which you can use to make your opponent pass to get out of combat. There's a lot of interesting things you can do there. That's for me a common use for this card, since you're doing a non-combat anyway. It fits into that kind of deck well, where you just use this as a block, go grab the card that makes them end combat basically, and then move on to your next non-combat turn. So it's just kind of nice in multiple places. It works for a lot of decks. Being an Omni is good. Orange doesn't have great access to that, so it's been a very welcome card, and it's put in a lot of work.
Yeah, I've played it in a lot of decks that just play, 4 or 5 drills. And so when you're playing that specific amount of drills, a lot of them like have matchups where they're great and matchups where they're not great. So you run out of that. You get to the later point of the game and you run into a spot where you're putting your orange spontaneous drill or something like that into play against your opponent's energy deck, and it doesn't really do anything. So being able to cash that in with this to go get even just another energy attack is very nice. You can also just go get the orange transform physical block, which is also great. So you got a lot of range with what this card can get, and basically what you want to do with this is turn a card, a drill, or a non in play that is not very useful to you to something you can use, which is going to do a good percentage of the time. And as Derek said, orange omnis hard to come by, so one that gives you some value, that's a welcome addition to most orange decks. So next up we have Orange Wild Sword Slice. This is a physical combat with Endurance 2, as all orange physicals have. It's a focus physical, doing +4. For the remainder of combat, increase the printed endurance on your orange style cards by 1. For the remainder of combat, you may use endurance even if damage can't be prevented. So this is pretty good for obviously for the Orange World Games deck, for the physical beats deck. Being able to use your endurance when damage can't be prevented can keep you alive in a lot of combats where you might otherwise be in a lot of trouble. Orange usually plays a little block light, especially the physical beats deck, because it has so much endurance in it. So if your opponent slaps an exertion on you or something, this can definitely help you out there for sure. Increasing the printed endurance is pretty important. There are a lot of cards, especially NZ cards, that care about printed endurance on orange physicals. So instead of just giving you a floating endurance +1 effect, increasing the printed endurance actually will help out a lot of cards. So yeah, this card's been okay in testing. It's not in play so far. It's not like a home run, like a slam dunk card. You'll notice that it does have sword in the title. We are kind of trying to create a sword deck that is not the freestyle typical sword deck. I do think orange is the route for that. Obviously, the card has Tapion on it because it's kind of he's kind of the MP that makes the most sense in that deck, and I do think that deck is really close. So this is a pretty interesting card. It's a card you can afford to play in basically any orange physical deck. Most orange physical decks don't level that much, so you don't need anger or anything. You're not missing any of that. So even if you're just playing like orange Mariaco, you can jam this card into your deck and feel fine about it.
Yeah, I agree. This card is a little bit like, I guess Blue Preparation ended up not keeping the sword in its name, but it had sword in its name at one point. But it's sort of like that card where it's got Tapion on it, it puts sword in the name, and people are like, oh, so this is like for a sword deck? And it kind of is, because we are sort of trying to build an orange sword physical deck. But it really is just a good, solid orange physical card. Decent base damage. The endurance thing matters so much in orange, especially with some of the orange and Z cards like Nick said. And then preventing damage. If you have a deck like orange physical, and you're like, yeah, man, I've got a cool 64 endurance in my deck, but also I've been exertion and can't use any of it, like that feels really, really bad. So just being able to get around stuff like that, or even just unpreventable attacks in general, it's a nice way to counteract some of that. I think this card's really cool, but Nick's right that it's not like it's not getting its name in shining lights or anything. But part of the issue still is the same reason that some of the other orange physical cards have had, in that orange physical just isn't that great yet. So despite being a pretty good card, especially for the deck itself still isn't putting up a ton of numbers, so it just sort of hides in the shadows a little bit as far as showing off as much as some of the other effective cards have. I think it's worth playing though, and I think if you're going to play orange physical, I think you're going to play the card. Alright. Orange Tough Enough card. Orange Explosive Wave. Nick mentioned before that blue Yamcha's Spirit Shot was his favorite card. I think this is probably mine in this set. Energy Attack. You may remove 5 orange style cards in your discard pile from the game, or discard 5 cards from the top of your life deck to advance the personality level. Removed from the game after use. So we've made a whole mastery, Orange Evolution, that's supposed to help with leveling an orange deck. This card does that as well, but in a sort of separate way, just being an attack. Now you can still remove orange cards from your discard pile to level the same way your mastery kind of can. But a neat thing you could do with this is you can now mill cards into your discard pile to add more cards there, so that in the next when entering combat step, you can use your evolution mastery to get another level out of the cards that you just gave it with this one. I think this card's awesome. It's, it's just a base energy attack, sure, but the point is that you get to level. And the decks that really want that, it has opened the doors a lot for building an interesting orange deck that you couldn't have done before without, doing a Aura Clash or something. This is super cool with, like a 19 deck that wants to get up to 3. There are just other decks that take a lot of advantage of that. Gohan can do it too. We've seen some Gohan energy builds that kind of start on Bookworm and then level up into his, big energies for 12, cost 0 or whatever that he gets to have on his like 4s and 5s. And this is just a nice way to kind of rush up those levels. I think this is a really neat card. It's such an interesting design and has just been really, really fun to use.
Yeah, so what this deck really opens up is a deck that does not want to level, but wants to be on level 2. That's where I've liked this the most. I'm a big Jace fan, as most people know, and this card is what makes Orange Jace like a playable deck, because Jace wants to be on level 2 but does not want to level up past that. I also really like this in settled down builds, especially now that we have a new level 1 for Vegeta. Getting to settle down is incredible. So just being able to level up immediately to settle down is great. Basically, any energy kind of personality that has a level 2 as their best level is going to love this. Also, if you're wanting to go to 3 or 4, that's totally reasonable. There's actually a couple of orange cards that can gain you anger. So this just, leveling you so that it doesn't lower your anger to 0 or anything like that, take away your work getting your levels up. 19 is, of course, a big one, most well known for, getting to his level 3, which is free energy attack, draw 2 cards. It's pretty good in orange. So yeah, if you're any kind of leveling tough, you'll know when you want this card. It's pretty clean and clear, and it does one thing, and it does that thing extremely well. So when you want it, it's gonna be the best card in your deck. Okay, so we're on to red now. Man, I keep saying cards are my favorite card in the set. This card is one of my favorites. Red Brawl is a physical attack that does +2 stages of damage. Raise your opponent's anger 1 level. Your opponent chooses 2 cards in their Sensei deck to remove from the game. This attack does an additional +X stages, where X is the number of empty Sensei deck slots in your opponent's Sensei deck. Okay, so on its base, this is a physical for +4, raise your anger 1, right? So that is kind of what I would call the bottom line for a red physical attack. You're going to play red physicals that do +3 or +4 that have some bonus effect. That's mostly what the red physical deck is. So the real value in this card is obviously the Sensei deck effect. It's combining it with red Aerial Force and red Clap and cards like that to remove Sensei deck to power this up, or maybe eventually run their Sensei deck out so you can get them to mill 8 with Aerial Force, or finally to use Annihilation to tuck all their scary cards back in, right? They can have allies and nons and various things like that, and this card will get you through all of those things. I think that this is a staple for red physical. I would not play a red physical deck without red Brawl, Aerial Force, and Annihilation at this point, because the combination of those 3 cards is so strong. If you are on red physical, even if you don't want to level and you're just a level 1 camp deck, you're still playing all those cards. This card's great. If you're playing red physical, play 3 copies of that card. I don't really have anything else to add.
Yeah, Nick, you really hit it on the head. There's a lot of cards in this set that I could be like, this is my favorite one. Oh wait, this is my favorite one. Oh, this is my. I think this set is just like full of really interesting, fun designs. We really got to kind of flex our creativity a little bit with this set, and I think it really paid off. This card is awesome. There's nothing else to say. It's so good at enabling the things the deck's already wanted to do. Getting to use your Annihilations for really interesting stuff now too is great. I love this card. You're gonna play 3 of this in a red physical deck. This card is so good that it's like encouraged people to play red physical. It's not even like, oh, I gotta add this to the deck I'm already playing. There are a lot of people who are like, oh man, this card makes me need to play this deck. And I think that's totally valid. This card is so fun to use. It's so strong, and has opened up some of the design and some of the play space for red a ton. Red Energy Pressure is another card that I think is really interesting and has helped the deck it's for a lot. It's a focused energy attack that does 6 life cards of damage. It raises your anger 1, and then your opponent can't perform a physical attack in their next attack or attacks phase. If this attack is successful, your opponent cannot perform a physical attack in their next 2 attack or attacks phases instead. So, I mean, it just goes without saying at this point, if you're on video 7 and you've been watching the series, 7 videos worth of us saying this. If this is your first time here, we've been saying it all video. Physical decks are a pretty strong answer to energy decks because your physical attacks are sort of blocks because it takes away the stages you need to pay for energy attacks. This one says you get to do an energy attack, then you get to make sure your opponent can't do one in their next phase so you don't lose any stages, so you can get at least 1 more off. But if it hits, then you get 2 more off. And it's just a really strong way to keep yourself fully involved in the combat and at a lot less risk of losing the stages, the precious stages that you need to be able to get through a turn as an energy deck. This card is super good. Red Energy has gotten a lot better, I think, because of it. I think it was kind of already almost there. Voltage Missile and Left Bolt and stuff are really strong cards. It just needs a little bit more push, and I think this card is a sprinting charge towards pushing that deck into playability.
Yeah, so I played a lot of Red Energy in Score before joining the league, and the 2 biggest problems the deck always had is that the mastery was not that strong, and there was not enough actual red attacks to get you through. So NZ has kind of fixed both of those problems with Red Explosion from NZ4 and just adding some more, generic red energy attacks so you can keep going. This is the best of the bunch. This is the best of the ones that have been added. Most people that have played a lot of energy decks know that the best cards in your deck are the cards that say your opponent's physical attacks don't work. So when you can add this into a deck that has Vegeta's Jolting Slash and Krillin's Solar Flare and effects like that, that's where you're going to get your value from. I think that this card has single-handedly put Red Energy on the map. I think that Red Energy is a very, playable archetype now, and a lot of it based around this card and protecting you from those physical attacks, like Derek said. You just can't get a lot better than that. And as I say it, every time I'll say it again, focused energy for 6 is a lot. It's a big attack, and it's focused, and people can't stop focused. So you're going to throw this attack a lot against your physical deck, and they're going to look at their hand full of physical attacks and be like, all right, well, I guess I pass. And then you're going to hit them again. And then they're going to say, all right, well, I guess I pass again. Then you're going to pass and get out of combat, and they took 12 life cards and you took 0. And that's a good combat. So,
that is the dream combat.
Last thing to add, this card has energy in the title for your cards that care about energy. Just something to be aware of. Okay, speaking of cards that have kind of defined red physical, let's talk about Red Grounding Chop. So Red Grounding Chop is a physical for +4, raise your anger 1. Yeah, sounds familiar, right? That's what all red attacks are. If you declare Tokawaza into all floating attacks that last for the floating effects that last for the remainder of combat, and it has a parenthetical that said this card can be played even if a card effect would prevent you from playing or performing it. So we just got through talking about Red Energy Pressure and how important it is to turn off your opponent's physical attacks, right? All of the cards that do that are stopped by Red Grounding Chop. The biggest problem with red physical has always been that there's a ton of ways to turn off your physicals. And once they turn off your physicals, your hand doesn't do anything anymore. So Red Grounding Chop is the counter. It is Red's answer to the energy decks that stop it. It's Red's answer to the ball decks that stop all you and things like that. It's Red's answer to everything. So the biggest problem I've ran into with this card is that it is kind of a non-bow with Red Cell Saga, which is typically been the generic red physical mastery. But what it has opened up is Red Boo Saga as a really unique and interesting deck. Red Boo Saga, make all your attacks focus physical beatdown deck, has actually come alive and been really strong. The ability to end floating effects, it is something you have to keep an eye on because most of these decks play things like Red Back Kick, which stops all energies. So, there's some effects like that you'll have to sequence well with. This card is a little bit harder to play at its apex, but the apex of this card is absolutely backbreaking. You know, your opponent as an energy deck, they draw 3 energies in Super Saiyan effect, and they enter combat and Super Saiyan affect you, and they think you're just going to take a beating this turn. And then you have a grounding chop, and now they're taking the beating. Because all of a sudden they're at 0, and they can't throw their energy attacks, and you got 3 more attacks in your hand you can throw. This card has been incredible. It's an auto-include in red physical for me. Even if you're on the Cell Saga Mastery, this is a card I want access to. Although it's not great all the time, it is great most of the time, and it's great against enough decks that it's something you're going to want to play.
Yeah, it's sort of like, when you'll play a City in Turmoil in your Sensei deck. Even if you're a deck that plays a couple of nons, if you face a deck that plays way more than you, sometimes it's just okay to be like, well, I guess those just sort of turn off. That's just kind of the same thing with the Red Cell Saga. It's, your Cell Saga Mastery is going to be on almost all the time, but if you get in a situation where turning that off to lose a couple of damage or whatever to turn on the rest of your hand for combat is sometimes just worth it. So maybe you don't need, a full 3 of it or something in the kind of deck like that, or maybe you don't have it in all the time, or maybe, you discard these or whatever. But just kind of having access to it, I think, is still worth it, even in that deck. But I love, that Nick touched on the Red Majin Buu Saga deck. It's been so fun seeing that that mastery see a lot more play lately, and physical focused attacks, physical or energy, are always strong. Even physical ones, where people do still run more like just physical blocks than they do just energy blocks.
Mm-hmm.
There's still plenty of times that they just, oh, I have an Omni, I guess, well, I can't block that. Oh, I guess my time isn't going to stop that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bunch of times that'll just get through that. Or, sometimes this just gets through a time right afterward. So that's worthy too.
Mm-hmm.
All right, another red card with energy in the title. Red Overwhelming Energy. This is our Tough Enough only card in red. Energy attack, raise your anger 1 level. If successful, reveal cards from the top of your life deck until you reveal a card with energy in the title and place it into your hand. Then place the remaining cards on the bottom of your life deck in a random order. Remove from the game after use. So I'm actually going to start at the bottom of that. Putting the cards on the bottom of your deck in random order. Super easy. Shuffle your, you revealed 6 cards, just shuffle them up in your hand and put them on the bottom of your deck. Easy. Whatever. So, you got an energy attack flat, 4 life cards, raise your anger 1. Sort of like the physical for 4, raise your anger 1. Energy flat, raise your anger 1 is pretty common. Then, getting to just sort of mill through your deck until you hit another energy card. You can do that a couple of different ways. You can play the red Energy Name Matters deck, where you just play all the red cards with energy in the title, and then you use your red energy. Oh, I'm always terrible at the name of this. With Gotenks on it that puts all your energy cards back in your deck.
Red Rapid Energy.
Rapid Energy, there you go, thanks. You can have that deck where you just try to absolutely maximize the number of energy cards that you have, and so you can keep putting a ton of them back, and this one will just mill through your deck to hit whatever the top one is. That's a perfectly fine way to use this. But another way that I think is super useful, and even more so, is to run just a couple of energy cards. Even sometimes maybe you just run only Trunks Energy Sphere or something, and so you now perform an energy attack and then mill until you hit the one of your 2 or 3 Trunks Energy Spheres in your deck that will have that in the title, and okay, cool, I've got a sphere now, ready for your stop ball or whatever, and that's an awesome way to use it too. It's sort of up to you what you think is best, whether you're having more targets or one specified target to just maybe you have to dig through 40 cards, but that's okay. They all go to the bottom again anyway. So it's not really a big cost in that sense. So it's just sort of up to you how you want to stack that combo. But it just opens up pretty creative options for building decks. A couple of very different directions for the same kind of energy word matters deck. And I think that's a really interesting way to implement that keyword or target word into a card design.
Yeah, I mean, most of the energy decks I play with red, just a lot of the good red energy cards just already have energy in the title, so you're gonna want to play most of them a good percentage of the time, which just means this will never miss, right? Which is great. Yeah, you just never want to miss on this. So it just being able to hit, generally speaking, another attack, or a lot of times another energy block, because all of the good red energy blocks play, say, energy in the title that you would play in an energy deck. So, sometimes you get an energy block. Most of the time you just get another energy attack, and you can just keep the gas on, keep the pressure on. A little behind the scenes, we originally tested this as a standard card, but the ability to be able to play this and go get Captain Ginnew's energy attack was too good. So what I would kind of looked at even in Tough Enough is you could still do that. And this could be a 3 anchor card, basically. You could, it's an option that you have. So there's a lot of options for what you do with this. But, I mean, most of the time, this is just going to be energy attack, raise your anger 1. If successful, go get another energy attack. I'm like, okay, that's good enough for me, right? I mean, that's good enough for me. This card's been great. If you're playing red energy and Tough Enough, you're going to play this card. Easy enough. All right, on to, I believe, our last style here, Saiyan.
Sure.
This is Saiyan Instinct. Saiyan Instinct is Saiyan Heritage only. It's a focus physical doing +3. If you declare Tokuwaza for the remainder of combat, you may copy the effect of a drill you control. Okay, so on its base, Saiyan Heritage only, nice little buff. Focus physical doing +3, pretty standard stuff. So if you declare Tokuwaza, you can copy the effect of a drill you control. So what does that mean? That means a lot of different things. You can copy a modifier drill, like a Saiyan Aggression drill, make all your attacks do an extra +2. You can copy something like a jeering drill to make your opponent's attacks cost 2 extra instead of 1 extra. Or you can copy freestyle drills. You can copy Champ Drill and get to use another Champ Drill effect. So there's a lot you can do with this. It does kind of push you into a direction of playing drills, which is not something that Saiyan does a ton. Obviously, that's a future Gohan thing. If you're in the prevention deck, that's a thing for that. So there's a couple of decks that this is going to really shine in, but all of those decks, it's an auto include. If you're playing Champ Drill and if you're playing Aggression Drill, those are some of the base ones, right? You're playing Saiyan Lurch, this goes and searches for a Saiyan Drill. You can get some value out of that too. So just any kind of setup that's going to play, you're going to play multiple drills where this can be valuable for you. This is a card effect you'll want. In your standard Saiyan Broly deck, you're probably not going to play this card. But like I said, in the prevention deck, in the future Gohan builds where you want to play some drills and things like that, this is a really cool effect.
There's a lot of drills in the game. There are a lot of Saiyan. I mean, there's not a lot of Saiyan ones, but the Saiyan ones that you use are historically great for a reason. There's a lot of freestyle drills that you could play. This lets you just copy into any of those. There, fun stuff that you can do is you can. Yeah, I mean, the list of great choices for this is really kind of innumerable, but getting a Champ Drill with a Saiyan deck that's already going to have 2 extra off the mastery, then 2 off a Champ Drill, then 2 more off a Champ Drill. Like, you can really extend out some turns in crazy ways. This card just creates a really interesting kind of deck building puzzle for Saiyan, and I think that's really cool. It tries to take you away from just like slap more attacks into your Saiyan deck and play Cell Saga, draw 2 more cards that are attacks, and just go. It kind of pulls you out of that style into doing something a little bit different with it, and I think that's cool. Just like some of the other cards that we have made, it's even in this set, it really tries to make you lean into something that the deck or that's the style isn't quite typically doing, and amplifies it just a little bit. I love seeing a little bit more love for the future Gohan deck too. I think Future Gohan is awesome, and the deck itself is really almost there. If you're playing the prevention version or just like the stage lock version, they're both good and they're both kind of right on the cusp, and this helps that deck a lot. So, Saiyan Broken Bones here is a Saiyan Heritage only physical attack that does +5 stages of damage. It's a big old beefy attack. But then for the remainder of combat, whenever your opponent stops an attack, their main personality loses 2 power stages. Now, notice that isn't to a minimum of 0, so they can lose stages past 0, and it also doesn't say that they have to pay 2 stages to block an attack. So your opponent, even if they're at 0, they can still play a block to stop the attack. That's fine, but then they're still going to lose 2 stages. It's just like some of the other, like Nick has mentioned, like Jace and stuff before, where he's got the energy, and then if stopped, they discard the top 2 of their deck. This is kind of the same thing. If they stop an attack, they're going to lose 2 stages. Their bones are broken. It hurts to put their arms in the way of your punches. So you get a nice big beefy attack that is heritage only, so it's fetchable off of cards like Goku Young again, and just relevant for stuff like that, and Lineage Mastery, and then just you play this early, and you're like, all right, cool, gonna go ahead and unload a whole combat on you. If you've got any blocks, it's gonna hurt to do so. Maybe you're gonna play a stop all, and then I still gotta put 2 stages of damage into you for every attack I gotta throw this turn, which is still a lot more than nothing. You can then end one of those turns on a beef after you've gotten them to 0, and then they're really stuck. So there's a ton of things that you can do with this. I like this card a ton. This is one, we don't do this a lot because the deck's already very good, but this is a card that I think you could just put into Broly. It's just a good physical that you can fetch off of his electrified power, and then messes up their whole turn worth of blocks. So I like this card a whole bunch. I think it's really strong. It is a nice, interesting way to be strong and Saiyan without just being like big Oonga Mooga number or whatever.
Yeah, so we talked about earlier with the red energy attacks that a lot of what the energy decks try to do is make it, play cards that stop all your attacks, right? That way they can keep throwing their attacks. So this actually is a good counter to decks like that. They can jolting slash you, and you can't do any damage to them with your physicals. But you can just throw this and then just make them lose stages over and over until they can't perform their energies anymore. I think that if you're on a physical beats Saiyan deck or a hybrid deck, this is a card I want access to. If you're physical beats only, I think this is a 3 of. If you're a hybrid deck, maybe 1 or 2. If you're Broly, it's searchable, something like that. But this card's been excellent. It's definitely very strong. It's a big attack. The damage is good. The effect is really strong. It's a good way to put pressure on your opponents. So our next card is Saiyan Impervious Defense. This is a physical combat with Transform. It stops a physical attack. You can remove any number of Saiyan Heritage-only cards in your discard pile from the game. For each card removed this way, you may remove one card in your opponent's discard pile from the game. Of course, it is removed from the game after use. So, this would be Saiyan's Transform block. It did not have one previously. It is a physical block, which is great. Saiyan is a little over-reliant on Omnis. So it having a transform physical block is super useful, especially being a physical combat, because most Saiyan decks are full of physical combat cards. And the secondary effect, removing the Saiyan Heritage only cards, you're just going to naturally have 4 or 5 Saiyan Heritage only cards in your discard pile most of the time. So, you use this block, and then, you get to look, and your opponent may only have a few cards in their discard pile that really matter, but this way you can kind of pick and choose and kind of, specify which ones you want to get rid of, right? If they have, a couple of transform cards you want to hit or something like that, this card is great for that kind of effect. Or, maybe they got a quickness drill or something like that in play, and you just want to set up the bottom of their discard pile. There's a lot of things you can do with these kind of effects where you can kind of pick and choose cards to remove. I think that players, especially from what I've seen here, don't put as much stock into it as they should. There's a lot of value in being able to move cards out of your opponent's discard pile, via transform or via things like just quickness drill, battle pausing, or cards that have specific cards that have energy in the title in a red deck, or Vegeta name cards in a Vegeta deck, something like that. So that extra effect on this block seems like not much, but it can be really strong and it can absolutely swing games.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked at length, right, in multiple of these videos about how good, like, blue has become. And so you just play this and do a blue, your opponent plays, like, their one Colossal Throw, and you stop it with Transform. Cool. Now you've stopped their cool chain attack, and then you can remove a couple cards to rip their other Transform cards out of their discard pile so they can't do more Colossal Throws later. And that's a deck especially that, like, really relies on its discard pile. Or if you're playing against blue MBS, which is also really good, you can rip just multiple blue cards out of the discard pile and every one of those that you take out is worth 2 or 3 or more cards, depending on what drills and stuff they have in play. This is one of those kind of sleeper hit cards, I think, where its effect doesn't read that strong, but the sum of its parts, I think, makes it really good. Being a straight physical block that's got a secondary effect that's reasonably strong is just kind of a welcome thing for Saiyan. Being transformed is super good. Physical combat is also the type it should be for the decks that are Saiyan. And then having a little bit of discard manipulation goes a million miles in the like NZ era format. So I love this card. I think it's like a long overdue card. One of the things when we were, as if you followed along through these sets, you'll notice that Saiyan doesn't really have the same kind of like transform suite that some of the other colors have gotten. And a lot of that obviously is because Saiyan already has like plus 2 or 3 card hands most combats over, other color decks. And so we created transform as a way to both make like cool techie choices a little bit more consistent, so you didn't have to like clutch them in your hand. You could set them in your discard pile and then use them when you needed to. But also it made it so that some decks just don't have the action economy that Saiyan or Namekian does, and it gave them something else to do with their action turn to turn their limited number of actions into the like highest performing number of actions that they could. And so we didn't want to make a Saiyan card. We didn't really want to make like Saiyan transform cards. We didn't think it really needed it to kind of keep up with stuff. But giving it a block felt really good. In general, there's been a little bit of debate from like the community about what the right answer for this is, but we kind of firmly believe that transform blocks are like what transform cards should probably be. They just do a great job of reducing the number of like straight blowout games that happen. Anyone that's played Scorzy for any more than a game knows that sometimes you just draw your 3, look at it, and be like, I'm dead. And then you eat 65 life cards of damage and just die. Transform blocks do a good job of at least reducing the number of times that happens. It doesn't obviously eliminate them or anything, but just having them available to you can really do a lot to make sure that you don't just eat a turn in the face that you can't do anything about otherwise. So we really like transform blocks, even more so than transform attacks for me, and I think even for Nick as well, where I don't need you necessarily to have, at this point, like we gave the colors that got transformed stuff, the stuff that I think kind of needed it or whatever, but I don't think there's a ton of need for a lot more transformable attacks that do like cool, strong stuff, because the colors kind of already have that. What I want more of is I want decks to have access to being able to defend themselves. And Saiyan, I think, really benefited from this one. Namekian and Red both could still use one. Maybe by this is NZ7 here. Depending on when you watch this, maybe future sets will have replaced that problem. But as of right now, that is something that I think still needs to be kind of covered. I think every style should have like a transform block, and just let every color be able to have its sort of oh shit button to stay in the game a little more. We've tried so hard to prevent or to reduce the number of blowouts. We hit a ban list last year with caught off guard drills and long journeys and things like that are just like some of those cards they just resolve and the game is just over. So trying to get away from cards and situations that cause that. This type of card does a good job doing that. Sorry, I didn't mean to get real long-winded there. There's the philosophy dump on Transform.
So our last card today is going to be the Saiyan Tough Enough card. It's Saiyan Blood. It is a combat card, Tough Enough only, Saiyan Heritage only. Remove a Saiyan Heritage only card in your discard pile from the game to raise your anger 1 level. You may repeat this effect any number of times. So what does this mean? This means that you can gain 1 anger at a time any number of times you can perform this effect. So most cards in the game, Are You Tough Enough gains 100 anger, but it's only one level, right? So the 100 anger is kind of more of a gimmick than it is anything else. This card is not like that. This card, if you remove 15 Saiyan Heritage cards from the game, you're gaining 3 levels. This is a really cool effect. Saiyan itself is not a style that has a lot of anger gain, unfortunately. So, a lot of times you're going to be able to get like 1 level naturally, and that's about it. But this card's just going to immediately level you all the way up, right? If you're, mid game or whatever, you got 10 or 15 cards in your discard pile, you're just going to jump a couple levels with this, which is a really cool effect. There is some really, really powerful things you can do with this. DB Super Broly on level 4 says every time you gain 5 anger, you draw a card. So if you could gain 15 anger with this effect, you could draw 3 cards. That's pretty strong. But most of the time what this is going to do is take a Saiyan deck that is not that good at leveling and jump you up a couple levels. You'll have a bigger power level, maybe a better power, and that way when you're drawing all your cards, you can really cash in on them. This effect's pretty cool. It honestly feels like it should be more powerful than it is, but what it does do is it allows you to play some strategies that maybe you couldn't previously play in Saiyan. Things that want to be on level 3 or 4, you can level up. It's a cool card. It's a cool effect. It's certainly been good enough to play. Generally as a 1 of or 2 of. There are a lot of search engines in this game, so it makes it easier to play as 1 or 2 of. But generally in your decks, you're just going to have enough Saiyan Heritage only cards to get value out of this. So you're going to get 1, 2, 3, sometimes maybe even 4 levels out of this and feel really good about it.
Yeah, it's cool that it does the anger thing so much differently than any of the other anger cards. It's always been very strange to me that Saiyan, the style of the dudes who transform a million times, doesn't typically lend itself well to characters leveling up outside of playing like the Buu Saga Mastery, which still, even with this card's existence, still has like plenty of its own use, I think. So I don't think this did anything to really like devalidate that mastery. So I think that's good. But the one thing, that you got to do with this is it's got to be a Saiyan Heritage only card, right? Not just a Saiyan card. So you do have to build your deck a little bit of a special way to like maximize the number of cards you could hit. But like Nick said, plenty of the just good Saiyan cards just are Saiyan Heritage only. Part of the the balance of why the card was so good is that not everyone can play it, and so that it's just an added benefit to you already. But if you really wanted to push these Saiyan Bloods into getting you 3 levels at a time or something, you certainly can, and you can just kind of load your deck up with Saiyan Heritage only cards, and especially through the use of NZ, we've added a number of them too that have really kind of all been great for the decks that would use or that would care about it. So you can kind of fit most of them into the same deck. I think this card's very cool. Being a combat is whatever it is, and Tough Enough only, like it's sort of one of those like who cares if you level up. I mean, maybe it gives you different power or whatever, but most of the time it doesn't do a lot other than just introducing a slightly new power bracket or whatever and then a different power. But it does let you build a deck that you couldn't normally do in Saiyan, and that's really exciting. Anytime we can have a card that NC makes that just turns on some kind of strategy that the color couldn't have done before is really, really fun. And this one does that pretty well, I think. Well, that's all for the styled cards in NZ7, Toughest in the World. There is still freestyle and personality cards left to go. But this video is, like we said at the beginning, already a long one, so we're going to split that into part 2. Thanks for hanging out this long if you have. Join us for part 2 as we finish up the rest of this set. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you next time.
Next time.